What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde, and boy, do we have an amazing guest. My friend Tim Elmore is in the house. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darius. Great to be with you.
I'm so pumped to have you here. So, Tim, I know you're new to the show, but I always like to tell our new listeners that The Greatness Machine, we're really about two things. We're about people living their passions and those creating greatness in the world. And you, my friend, are neither short of passion nor greatness. So I am so excited to have you here. I want to give a little bit of background on how we connected. Do you mind if I give a couple snippets here and there? Does that work for you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Go for it.
So my team is always on the lookout, and we're out there reaching out to people left and right. Noah, our producer of our show, she's the queen of hitting people up to see if they'll be on the show. So we hit up John C. Maxwell to see if he'd be a guest on the show, and his team came back and said, John can't do the show right now, but we have a couple individuals that do work with John in multiple different ways, and you really should consider having them on the show. So they gave us a list. You don't know any of this, by the way, but they gave us a list, and we read through, and we're like, nope. Oh, he looks interesting. And it was you and one other gentleman.
Okay. All right.
And so we reached back out. We said, you know what? Like, Tim looks really interesting. We'd love to have him on the show. And that's actually where it came to be. I not to say there's anything wrong with the other folks, but we were really interested in the work you're doing. You're doing some amazing work with leaders and leadership in the world today. And I'm super excited to have you here. So thank you so much for coming to be a part of the show.
I am honored to be with you. I look forward to this very tantalizing conversation myself. This should be fun.
So if you don't mind, I want to give a little bit of your formal background. For listeners, one of the reasons we wanted Tim here is Tim is doing a ton of work in leadership. And for those of you that have listened to the show a lot, you know that I am a leadership fanatic. Tim is the founder and CEO of Growing Leaders, an Atlanta-based nonprofit created to develop emerging leaders. He has served and has worked with Dr. John C. Maxwell since 1983, parted ways, and now is coming back to do a ton of new work with John and the Maxwell organization. Leading expert in emerging generation and generational diversity in the workplace. We're going to learn all about what that means in just a few moments here. Man, you've spoken to over 500,000 leaders, worked with some of the top companies like Chick-fil-A, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, and you are a very accomplished author. And I myself, having authored one book, know that that's a heck of a lot of work. And you have a new book launching this fall, so I can't wait to learn more about that. As well as you've written over 35 books, one of which, Habitudes, Images That Form Leadership Habits and Attitudes. Man, you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I am. And I wrote my very first book in 1984. I was 24 years old, should not have written a book. Who writes a book at 24? I want to apologize to everybody that read that book and say, I'm so sorry. I did not know what I'm doing. But I got bit by the bug. Once you do it, it is like giving birth to a baby. It's labor pains and everything else. But I so fell in love with the fact that you could put words in print and then go fly somewhere, meet somebody. They tell you you changed their life and you've never met them before. But it was because there was a resource created along the way. So, I love to write and I love to meet people. And we're going to have fun today, Darius. It's going to be a blast.
Oh, I'm so excited. So I learned when I wrote my first book, I wrote a book called The Core Value Equation, which is how do you build a core value driven organization, which I know is a big deal with a lot of the work you all do in Atlanta. Yeah. So I didn't realize it, but the publisher said, the word author comes from authority. It means that you're an authority on it. So I got to ask, and as everyone who listens to the show knows that I am like a geek about origin story. So I want to learn the origin story. But before we go to your origin story, when you're 24 years old and we're both Gen Xers. So this is pre-millennial. So I mean, now everyone's an authority. irregardless or regardless of age.
Yes.
So what were you the authority on at the ripe young age of 24 that you felt the need to author?
I know. Well, I was asked to write a book by the publisher, and it was because I was working with university students at the time in a department under John Maxwell's leadership. And I was at San Diego State University, and I had developed a leader development program that was really working for 18 to 22-year-olds. So they said, talk to us about this. And I was only like a hair older than them, but had really begun to connect with students. I was like a big brother, I guess, in a sense, in my relationship to these college students. So it was a book called Caring for the Called, those who felt called to lead. How do you develop them as young adults and young professionals? So anyway, that was the origin story on that. And I really, really love young people. I'm now no longer young, but I still love the emerging generation. I've now seen 4 generations come through in my career of 42 years. And so love what I get to do. Yeah, it's a privilege.
I love it. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you're 24, you are definitely an authority on 18 to 22.
That's right. That's right.
You know, like, listen, no one has done 18 to 22 better than a 24-year-old. I got to say that. At least you've been there and done that.
And you have a memory of what it was like. So anyway.
Exactly, you were just there.
Yeah, that's right.
Like you barely got out. You've barely grown outside those clothes.
That's right. That's right.
So
Absolutely.
wait, would you say San Diego State? Is that where it was?
Yeah.
Yes. Are you from California originally?
Not originally, but I spent 20 years of my life in California. So yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm a Southern Californian originally. But we're both Southerners now. I live in Austin.
Yeah. Right.
So go Aztecs. Okay.
Yeah, that's
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I went to UC Santa Barbara and UC Davis. So, but I had a lot of friends that. Yeah, so but San Diego is pretty darn good. It's like 275 days of sunshine a year, so you can't complain about that.
That's right. We were spoiled.
So
yeah,
super spoiled. So take us back. I'd love to hear the origin story. Like, what got you down this road of leadership and into this world of leadership that you've been in for so long?
Well, I started teaching students 1979, 1980, that school year. And I was finishing up my degree, but I was needed as a teacher assistant. So I jumped in, fell in love with the idea of teaching young people. In fact, I would say that's when I decided I want to spend my career with the next generation, even though I was still part of the emerging generation at that time. Fast forward 4 years, 1983, went on staff with John Maxwell, and I began to see the value of leadership development. So I married the idea of teaching young people and doing leader development together. And I began to see, oh my gosh, if we could not only help these kids graduate, but help them graduate with a leadership mindset where they think bigger than just their own life. And they understand the value of adding value to people. Oh my gosh, OMG, So through the 80s and 90s, I really that's what I gave myself to. Xers were coming through, millennials had just begun to be born, and they were coming through the ranks and so forth. So I started growing leaders in 2003, about 20 years ago, with the whole idea of can I do for this emerging generation that John Maxwell was doing for corporate leaders and established leaders. And so growing leaders is all about that. How do we find ways to connect with millennials and Gen Zers? And now the alpha generation is coming up. How do we do this and how do we better connect with them? So it's my joy. I really mean this. It sounds cliche. It is my passion to find ways to connect with these kids that could be my children now. I'm old enough to be their dad or their granddad and still find ways to put timeless principles in their hands that they can use in their own life.
What, so when you started doing this work, teaching, and then it led to leadership, explain so growing leaders, you said almost 20 years ago. But you were doing leadership, as you said, when you're 24, you developed a leadership program. Was it through this teaching and working with as an educator? So were you an educator? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was both an educator. That was my first step into leadership. And although I was teaching subjects besides leadership, my love became leadership development. My work with John was through both a nonprofit and a church. John was a pastor, for a while.
Right.
and it was in San Diego. So is a lot of nonprofit work in there where people followed you but didn't get paid to follow you. I think leading a nonprofit is the acid test of leadership because people are volunteering. They're not getting paid to lead, to follow you. So I really feel like I cut my teeth in that arena. And then, of course, I've led, companies and other nonprofits where we're partnering with, like you said, Delta or Coca-Cola or Chick-fil-A, and we're doing consulting and coaching and leadership development there as well. So it's kind of been in different circles that I've learned to kind of cut my teeth and learn how to lead folks and then do leader development with them.
So let me ask you a question. Like, having spent, sounds like your entire career really, I guess, passionate about leaders and leadership. What is your like when you think of leadership? What is your definition of leadership?
John Maxwell said for years, leadership is influence, no more, no less. I think that's a good working definition to help people break out of the mold of thinking you got to have a badge or a title or a position. But I go a little bit in a little bit slightly different direction. I want to see a new generation of young leaders who know how to solve problems and serve people. Solve problems and serve people. So I know that's not probably an exhaustive definition, but when I talk to let's say a high school principal or a college dean, and I say, wouldn't you love to see your school graduating kids that know how to solve problems? So they go, absolutely. That's what we need today. We're so polarized right now. Good grief. And we're so divisive, I think. I think we just need to focus on, say, how can you find a problem that needs to be solved and serve people in that arena using your gifts? That's what I think we need more of in the world. And so that's what we're doing at Growing Leaders.
So I have a mentor, his name is Rand Stagen, and he runs Stagen Leadership Institute in Dallas.
Okay.
And he has a saying about this, what you're talking about right now, where he says the problem we have right now is that we have level 5 problems and when we have level 3 leaders.
Wow.
Right. And so that we're in this world right now, and then the program he teaches is integral leadership, right? Which is how do you take all these different types of leaders and all these different types of people with all these different mindsets and histories and backgrounds, especially in the United States of America, where we're a melting pot, right? And how do you get them to your point, solve problems when they're not necessarily seeing things the same way? And how do you get them to serve each other when maybe they don't want to serve each other, when they don't when they don't agree that, that serves my community the way I want it to, without it affecting your community. How do you think about that when you're teaching leadership or when you're working with leaders? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, when I'm in a corporate setting or even a university setting, a state university, I usually go to research. And without going long into this, when studies are done on human happiness or human purpose, where we have a great deep sense of purpose, it's usually tied back to those two things that I just mentioned, solving problems and serving people. We have adrenaline and endorphins and serotonin running through our veins when we have solved a problem. I just think the human machine was designed to solve problems. We are problem solvers in our innate nature. We're not narcissistic in our innate nature, although we feed that all the time. We're designed to serve people. When I serve other people, Darius, I have my greatest sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. When I solve problems for other people and for myself, no doubt, I am deeply satisfied. So I usually share that, and people generally do what you're doing right now. You're nodding, going, "Yep, that's true. That is so true." Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, instead of getting caught up in myself throughout my life and my selfie that I just took and posted, if I get caught up in finding out what do people need around me and how can I be a part of that solution with my gift, with my talent, now I'm really onto something. Most people get that right away, and if I just kind of help them pivot to looking at outward instead of inward, now we're off and running.
I love that. So let me ask a question, because you're touching on something that I think, I don't know if it's helping or hurting the current state of the leadership in the world, but as I mentioned earlier, you're a leading expert on emerging generation and generational diversity. You mentioned that earlier, that we look at the millennials, the Gen X's, the Gen Z's, now the Gen Alpha. My son's a Gen Alpha. Yeah. And so we have different types of people, different expectations, brought up differently. And but yet we're trying to solve probably one of the most complex worlds we've ever lived in's problems. How do you see that over your years? How have you seen the different, I guess, is there a different style of leadership that's emerging, or what are you seeing from a generational standpoint that's really changed the way that you think we need to approach the world today?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I have two things going through my mind right now. One is I do think the acceptable style or approach to leadership has changed over the last 60, 70 years. I think anybody with a cursory viewpoint would say absolutely. So if you go back to the 50s and 60s, some 60, 70 years ago, there was an acceptable style of leadership that I would call the military commander style. It was just an approach that was very top down. It was a Dwight Eisenhower, JFK, even the presidents of the United States came from military backgrounds. So the core value was loyalty. You stayed in that company for all your career, and then you got a gold watch and you go play golf, that sort of thing. As we moved into the 60s and 70s, that was a leader as a CEO. Now it's a style, not a position, but you began to see that people weren't as loyal as they once were. They moved around a bit, and now you had to lead through casting vision. So even if you didn't like the leader, you loved the vision and you stayed with the organization if it was cast well. Key value was productivity. Okay. You moved into the 80s, and I think the approach to leadership had to change again. It was the leader as an entrepreneur. If you think about the 1980s, so many new innovations hit the marketplace. And so companies wanted to be a bunch of entrepreneurs, and we were inventing, we were creating. Look at the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates of the time. Okay. So now the key core value was innovation. We wanted to be the first one out. The term cutting edge became a thing in the 1980s. By the 1990s, Gen X had entered the workplace for the first time. And now it was the leader as a coach. People did not want a leader in an ivory tower. They wanted a leader that was touchable and could be interacted with and touched each day. So the leader is a coach, often player coach, type of feel. And so the core value was teamwork at that time. As we moved into the 21st century, I believe it was the leader as a connector. I think we were on the internet at this point, and we wanted a leader that I could connect with and connect to. So that became the metaphor. But I think today I'm taking a long time. I'm so sorry to get to this goal.
No. I'm just like absorbing everything you're saying. Please continue.
I think there's a double metaphor that I use today that describes the leader that Gen Z so desperately wants, but may not know how to ask for. It's the leader as a poet gardener, Now let me drill down on those two metaphors. The leader as a poet is the person that realizes I need to read the culture before I lead the culture. So just like a good poet looks out at what's happening in the society that they're about to write about, and they write words that everybody reads and goes, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm feeling. The poet has written what I'm feeling. Isn't that the sign of a good poem? You go, oh my gosh, that girl, that guy just said what I'm feeling. So the leader's a poet, puts a team of people together. It's a team of leaders, not a team of followers, a team of leaders. They would be silly to assume that they have all the answers themselves. But listening to that team, air ideas and voice opinions and thoughts and so forth, they're plucking from this team and then saying, here's what I'm hearing you say. And when they cast vision, everybody's going, yes, that's it. You're a wordsmith, and you just said what I'm feeling. That's the poet. The gardener metaphor, Darius, is the person that would say, I realize that the primary function, not the only function, but the primary function of my work is to develop or grow the people under my care. So just like a gardener goes out to that soil and says, I got to pull those weeds, and I got to fertilize that ground, and I got to water that ground, and I give it sunshine. This leader is growing the people under her or his charge. If we will be poet gardeners, I think we're going to be magnetic to the emerging generation, just magnetic. And it may not be such a fight for talent. It will be, people will be beating down the doors because that's the environment they want to live in, is a poet gardener. So that would be my long answer to a short question there.
That was an amazing answer. By the way, I developed my purpose statement, and which I'm going to tell it to you right now. I might butcher it a little bit because I don't have it verbatim in front of me, but I had written this after 1 year of thinking about it and doing a bunch of work. And it was, I want to live a poetic life, a life where I am engaged and help others around me to become more engaged.
Oh my goodness. You have nailed
which is
what
basically, I swear to God, I'm not lying to you. That's my why.
Wow. Interesting.
So yeah, that's total poet Gardner, by the way. Jesus.
Yeah, it really is.
Who would have? Wow. Okay. Well, we're done. We don't.
Yeah, that's right. You intuitively.
No, we're done.
Yeah. Your intuition got it. And mine was based on, interviews with leaders in different generations and so forth. But that's so interesting that you just picked that up just from your intuition, your spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really just what I like. I'm half Persian, and Persian is the Persians are very poetic people, right? They speak Farsi is a poetic language.
Yeah,
I've always been drawn to words, and I'm like a coach person. Like I was a D1 wrestler, and I would always work with younger people, and I like developing leaders. Anyway, what you just said, I was like, oh, that's why I don't feel like. I guess that's why I feel like I can lead lots of different types of people. I never thought about it in turn and what the way you said it. So it's interesting. My next question for you, but you literally just pulled that out of me, like without even knowing it. I believe, and I wrote a book. My book is completely about this. My belief is that forget about my belief for a second. Core values, and I think core values are a really important part of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Core values are, if you look them up in the dictionary, is the fundamental beliefs of a person or organization.
Yeah.
And my book that I wrote was essentially said that core values have the opportunity to become the language of accountability for a person or organization, right?
Yeah.
Like what can you create this thing and make it come to life because of what you believe in, right? And what I heard you just say is that's the poetic side. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how do core values interplay with this idea of being the poetic? Because I get the Gardner side. Gardner is, hey, what's in it for me, boss?
Yeah,
right. Are you going to grow me or not? Right.
Yeah.
But I think listeners may not fully, comprehend. Like, how do I use my words to connect with people? And what I heard you say was like, oh, that's easy. Go figure out your core values and then go find people that believe what you believe. Make that the language of the organization and go develop those people so that they're adding value and you're adding value to them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. So I wouldn't have to walk very far in the building I'm sitting in right now to show you a wall that lists and describes our core values. We have 6. One of them is make it better. We want to every year feel like we have made not only our partners and clients better, but we have become better ourselves. So one of our Habitude images is attached to each one of our core values. So they are make it better. Another one, you'll love this one, turn up the fun. We feel like that growing as a leader ought to be fun. That may not be what anybody else thinks, but we just think it's just going to lubricate it when it's fun to do. Another one is, make it better, turn up the fun. Another one is, it's all on ownership. In fact, it's sign your name. Just like an artist signs her name or his name to a painting, and they don't sign it until it's done, until they're proud of it. So every task you do, you ought to be able to sign your name to that and say, I'm proud of this. I couldn't do it any better. That sort of thing.
I like that.
So anyway, those are just some examples. But what we've done, because we teach leadership with images, Habitudes are images that form leadership habits and attitudes. We place one of our images. So the image we put next to sign your name is drivers and passengers. Think about this, Darius. You hop into a car with a different mindset based on whether you're the driver or the passenger. If you're the passenger, you may be hopping in the back seat, putting your earbuds in, listening to music, waving to friends out the window, looking at billboards. But when you're behind the wheel, you're telling those people in the back seat to shut up because you can't think straight. I got to do this here. You got to turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right, get to the destination. We want to build drivers, not passengers in life. Passengers are fine, but drivers are thinking about what they got to do to get to that destination, and they're not blaming somebody else when they didn't get to the destination. So again, it's just a simple concept, but it's what you would want to teach your children one day. You got to own this thing. Don't be a passenger in life. Be a driver. So anyway, that's just a quick answer to how we try to attach imagery and words to these core values, and they are everything to us. We look at them afresh every Monday morning when we start our week. We look at our core values, our mission, and our vision, and then we're off to the races.
I love that. Yeah, I call that core value symbolism, what you're talking about, which that's the way we describe it in my book. But I want to talk about your book. So Habitudes, Images That Form Leadership Habits and Attitudes. So tell us about that. When did you write that book? And obviously you started talking a little bit about it now, but give us some background on the book, because that's a really big deal of a book that you wrote, and it's gotten a lot of acclaim. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Well, I was a double major in college. One of my majors was commercial art. I was there on an art scholarship. So imagery has always been a big deal to me. Throughout the 80s and 90s, I would teach leadership, and I would use a metaphor or an image. Once PowerPoint came out, I started using PowerPoint. But I noticed that the listeners would say, I don't remember everything you said, but I remember the picture you showed us, or I remember the metaphor that you showed us, or the story you told us. And I started realizing that's what they remembered. It wasn't the 3 points or the 6 ideas or the 6 steps. It was the imagery. So I started anchoring the big ideas I was sharing, Darius, with pictures. And then I remembered, that I started realizing this is what they're getting. So Habitudes, the very first Habitude book came out. It was 2 decades in the making, really. But Habitudes book 1 came out in 2000. I wrote it in 2003. It came out in February of 2004. And it's now sold 2.4 million copies. So I realized I was onto something. I don't think I said anything new, but I framed it in a new way. Here was an image of an iceberg. Here was an image of a starving baker. Here was an image of drivers and passengers. Here was an image of thermostats and thermometers. And all of these images were simple to understand, but very profound to practice. And it's been sold to young leaders mostly. You know, some old have bought it too, but young leaders. And now there are 10 Habitude books, and now it's digital, it's online, blah, blah, blah. But I have had so much fun developing metaphors to represent big ideas that we all know are true, but maybe a young person will remember it because it was a picture.
Are you defining I'm assuming that there's different habits and attitudes, as you call them, habitudes, that you would define or your book would define to be as a good leader, right? And you just named a couple of them. Yes. Are you then giving them the image, or is this about them creating their own, or is this about you saying, no, here are the habitudes that I promote, and here's an image that you can associate with that habitude?
It's both and. So we start with offering some imagery to a 15-year-old that would go, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm trying to figure out who I am. So we first offer a set of images, but we have schools sending me emails and they're posting on social and direct messaging where they're coming up with their own now. So it's so much fun to get students sending me stuff, and I've gone, oh my gosh, I would have never thought about that myself because I'm not 16 anymore. I'm old, but it's so much fun. But so yeah, we do start with us offering them, but you know what? Pictures are worth 1,000 words, no doubt about it. And so it gets student engagement along the way because we're talking about an image. Here's what I say all the time to teachers: pictures beat lectures, pictures beat lectures, pictures beat lectures every day. So anyway, we're seeing now them developing their own. And of course, I love that because they're taking ownership now of their own growth. And that's ultimately what we want.
So, when we were researching having you on the show, my team had done a lot of research on the Habitudes book. And, in the book, you talk about a generational gap as far as collaboration is concerned, making synergy, making teamwork even more challenging than ever. Yeah. Why do you see that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the term generation gap was first coined in the 1960s by John Poppy, Life magazine editor, because the baby boomers were the new kids on the block and they were so different from their parents, right? Well, I think the gap, Darius, has gotten larger with time because the screens in our life have gone from public to private. Think about the 1960s for a minute. I remember as I was a young kid in the 1960s. So the one screen we had in our house was a television. It was mostly black and white in the very beginning. And the whole family would gather around the television and watch I Love Lucy or the Andy Griffith Show or, something like that. But we all gathered around, watched the show together, and then talked about it afterwards or laughed together or whatever. Fast forward, the screen became mini screens in our house. Not every family, but usually you had maybe a screen in the master bedroom, a screen in the living room, a screen in the den, and you could watch different shows. And television programming was targeted to teenagers, to adults. It was edgy with laugh-in. It was this or that. Now, think about it. We've all got a smartphone in our hand, and that screen is very private. I mean, when I say private, I mean very much niched to me. I've got a teenager goes, I got an Instagram account that my mom and dad know about, but I got 4 Finsta accounts, fake Instagram accounts. They're personas that I've made up. Mom and dad have no idea. So all I'm saying is the way life is niched today, we may have fundamentally different streams of people we're hanging out with, niches of demographics we're hanging out with. And so we can come to a workplace and have a Gen Z 22-year-old, an Xer or a millennial, and then an Xer, then a boomer. Maybe there's a builder generation that's still working at 76 years old. I'm telling you, we have so much to glean from each other, but we're polarized right now because we tend to think differently, listen to different music. We're on different social media platforms. And so I'm trying to help bring the generations together so what was once polarized can now be synchronized and we gain from each other in that workplace. That's my goal as I work.
Interesting. I have 8 Finstagram accounts, just so we're on the same page. They blocked me because I kept taking too many. No. You know what it was? I'll tell you what it was. I got invited to be on this really popular podcast called Dropping Bombs, Brad Lee, and he says, "Well, you have one Instagram, and then which is Whoop Darius, based off the song Whoop, There It Is, and then I have King Darius on Twitter, and then I have the Darius Show on TikTok." And he said, "You got to have one. You can't have all these different handles, Darius. It's confusing."
Yeah.
And I said, well, man, I'm not trying. I'm new to this influence stuff. And so I went and I couldn't find one where there was all 3 the same. So I kept trying new names. I came up with tons of them though. But anyhow, I was half kidding.
Yes. That's hilarious.
So I try. I want to ask you a question though. So as a leader though, we're talking about generation gaps.
Yeah.
And I think I hear what you're putting down. I'm picking up what you're putting down, which is in the past there was generation gaps too. I don't think like the hippies in the 60s were like had it much in common with their World War II parents who had anything in common with their, turn of the century parents, right? So I think the generation gaps have probably been around for a fair amount of time. Probably more so in the last 200 years than probably prior to that. But I think what I'm picking up that you're putting down is that technology has isolated people more, which is ironic.
It really is.
And that's exacerbating this generation gap. So let's assume that social media and technology and me getting things the way I want it, my way, separately from my parents because of this phone I have, is creating more isolation. It's creating less connectivity. It's creating more of, I guess, friction potentially, or less empathy or understanding between the generations. How do we close the gap? Like, how do we do it at work? How do we do it at home? What are your thoughts on this? How do we make change happen?
Yeah, it's the ultimate question right there. In the new book I have coming out, I try to answer that very question because it's the $64,000 question. Well, the first thing I would say is we need to stop as much as we can stereotyping. Because we're not willing to think deeply a lot of times, we look at someone from another generation, we see them doing something we don't understand, or listening to something we don't understand, and we start stereotyping. Think about this. Haven't we all, listeners, heard this? All those builders are just antiquated. All baby boomers are just stubborn. All Gen Xers are just, skeptical. All millennials are narcissistic, and all Gen Zers are fragile snowflakes. I mean, come on, haven't we heard at least one of those along the way? And that's a stereotype. They're not all, and we know better, but we do it anyway. So what if we switch the narrative? What if we said, oh my gosh, those builder generation old folks, oh my gosh, they got so much to add. They're so loyal, and and they got so much to offer, that sage wisdom. Baby boomers, yeah, some can be stubborn, but oh my gosh, they got coaching and stories to tell, and they've been through so much. They've got so much value to add if we just listen. They've grown up in similar times, but decades ago. Xers, oh my gosh, yeah, some might be skeptical, but they've got pragmatic wisdom, and they have contrarian points of view. If we just listen to them, they could probably lead us through some of the stuff we're going through right now, because they were often latchkey kids growing up. Millennials, yeah, some might be narcissistic, but oh my gosh, they've got hope, and they've got optimism, and they've got, confidence. Oh my gosh. And then Gen Zers, oh my gosh, 72% of high school students today want to be an entrepreneur. They've got entrepreneurial spirits. They've got hacker mindsets, and it's not just technology that they're hacking. They're figuring out how to get behind systems and doing this better. So when I've worked with companies and helped them get past the stereotype and really get into what kind of value these have, it is amazing. So here's my advice. Ditch the niche. We've got to ditch the niche. We've got to have water cooler conversations with people from other generations, not just the people that think like us, vote like us, listen to the same music, think the same way. That's just not even healthy right there. Ditch the niche. We need to start reverse mentoring couplets. So have you heard this term reverse mentoring, Darius?
I haven't, but is that where, like, so I have a friend that said that everyone should have 3 different mentors. Someone that's like older than them and more successful, someone who's a peer, and someone who's younger. Is that part of it?
It's the same gene pool as that. So the term reverse mentoring was actually coined, as far as I can tell, from Jack Welch way back in the 1990s when he was CEO of General Electric. Here's what was happening that led him to this marvelous idea. So back in the 1990s, he had some, 58, 59, 60-year-old executives, and computers were new back in the 90s. They were just making their way into the marketplace. Well, his 60-year-old executives didn't want to use a computer. They had their pad of paper and their pen, and they were fine, But he had some new college graduates from MIT that were coming on board at GE, and they were very at home with computers. And Jack Welch knew that computers were going to be a thing in the future. So he matched up his, let's say, 58-year-old executive with his 22-year-old young professional, put them together, and said, I want you both to mentor each other. So the 60-year-old was obviously pouring into the younger one, saying, here's how this company works, and I think I can help you accelerate your growth and avoid some of the problems I had. But you mentor me, 22-year-old, in how to turn a computer on and how to use this device and that device. It worked out brilliantly. And now companies that I meet with and consult with are doing reverse mentoring relationships all over the place. And it's so brilliant to see 20-somethings mentoring 50-somethings. And yet those same 50-somethings have value, obviously, to add to those 20-somethings. But here's what we're finding. The age of authority is dropping with each generation. It used to be if you were back, 60, 70 years ago, your shelf life of your job was 10 years. Nothing much changed in 10 years. Today, oh my gosh, we got Mark Zuckerberg starting Facebook in his 20s, right? Or Google or Zappos or whatever. The entrepreneurs are younger. So here's what we're finding. We need modern elders and digital natives getting together. And that's just what we need. The old. We still need the old for sure for emotional intelligence issues, but we need the young because they're coming up with ideas that are zany to that baby boomer, but that's exactly where culture's going. So I'll stop talking there, but I'm telling you, this is what we've got to find a way to make this work where we're not off-putting to different generations because we only see it one way. It's both and, not either or.
Yeah, I actually just heard 3 different things than what you just said. First of all, I really appreciate this idea of modern elder. I have a friend, Chip Conley. He's a former guest on the show. He started the Modern Elder Academy, right?
Love that guy. Yeah.
And Chip was brought into Airbnb to work with Brian Chesky. He was essentially his coach. And for the people that don't know this about Chip, Chip ran Joie de Vie Hotels in California, largest boutique hotel firm in the country. Which is why that would have been relevant for him to mentor Brian. Now, the flip side of that is Brian was an expert at this emerging technology of shared hotels, if you will, which we now call Airbnbs and VRBOs. So I love this idea of the merging of the modern elder who's been there, done that, with the person that's creating the future, right?
Yeah.
And I love that idea. The second thing I heard you say was empathy, like having empathy and I guess a high emotional intelligence. And you didn't say that specifically, but that's what I picked up, which is like, look, we need to have more of that because like get off my lawn, I know better than you is not going to work. That's a closed-mindedness that doesn't make sense. The flip side of that's like, boomer. What is it? What do they make jokes about? Like,
boomer.
Basically like, okay, boomer. Yeah. See, I'm not a boomer, so I'm not listening. I'm the Gen Xer that's like, shut up, millennial. But listen, I was born in 78, which means I graduated high school in 96, which means when I graduated high school was the tip of the spear of the beginning of the internet, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the first generation, I'm the last generation that played outside, and I'm the first generation to be on the internet, right?
Yeah.
I'm like a very rare generation. I understand both. I'm fluent in both languages.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying, which is we have to be empathetic and I guess appreciative of each other's differences.
Yeah.
So that we can gain maximum value. Am I hearing you properly?
Absolutely. In fact, let me volley back with this statement. Technical skills depreciate. Social skills, like emotional intelligence, appreciates, but we don't act like it. That in itself is the dilemma we have. We want tech skills, but tech skills are going to we're going to have to reinvent ourselves several times before our career's over. But I'm telling you, emotional intelligence, social skills, interpersonal skills, just appreciate. In fact, I would say the higher you go in your position in your organization, the more emotional intelligence is going to be critical for you to develop. But we got to learn it. And the book, New Kind of Diversity, that I wrote is all about building those social and emotional skills that we're going to need if we're going to move up this proverbial corporate ladder.
Yeah, so let's talk about, so you have a new book, and so I'm sorry, do you mind repeating? It's not out yet, so I know it is out, or it's coming out?
It's going to come out next month. The name of the book is A New Kind of Diversity. So we talked forever about ethnic diversity, and we need to keep talking about that. Gender diversity, need to keep talking about that. Income diversity, for sure. But I think generational diversity is a thing. You just joked about the okay boomer, and we've all heard about how to confuse a millennial, hashtag how to confuse a millennial, hashtag okay Karen, where, Gen Zers are making fun of Gen Xers, But I'm telling you, the fact that it's a thing on social media tells us it's a thing. And far too often we have 4 and 5 generations working together, or at least attempting to work together, but we're not finding the synergy that we know must be there, but we're polarized instead of synchronized. So my goal in this book is just to help these different generations really learn to collaborate and not be off-putting to each other and just tolerating each other on Monday through Friday.
And so when you look at the book and like, is it really like a blueprint on, or like, kind of tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what can a reader expect if they're, first of all, I guess, who's the reader for? Is it for like a senior level manager? Is it for a mid-level manager? Is it for the CEO? Who's the reader, and what can they expect to get from this book outside of the high level? Hey, I got to understand the different, generations and how might I work with them better?
I did write it to leaders for sure, although I think anybody reading it could benefit. We had a lot of, prototype beta testing of the research behind it. But I wrote it to a leader to be an encyclopedia and a dictionary on the generations. So an encyclopedia, you can read and say, I understand what shaped the boomers now, in their early years and why they might think this way. I understand Gen X. I understand millennials. I understand Gen Zers. I even have an appendix that says an early introduction to Generation Alpha, which is not in the workplace yet, but you might have them as children. And you do, Darius, right? You've got Gen Alpha. Okay. So it's an encyclopedia to help people understand. You could use it as a reference book to say, I just want to read about the millennials. I am not understanding those people. But a dictionary, because we have grown up in different worlds, we need different words to connect with them. So I try to offer that as it's a dictionary and encyclopedia for any leader to say, I want to better understand my people who are in this very workplace, but I don't yet understand them.
Wait. So we don't know each other that well yet, but I do have kind of a deviant mind. So
Okay.
Is there an actual dictionary of like vocabulary for for each generation? So like I go in there and know what slang they're saying?
Yeah. So here's what we've done. I do offer some of that, but I know the slang is going to change over time. So I do offer some terminology, but we have created an assessment that's absolutely free called the GQ. Okay. The GQ. So it's your generational quotient you can measure. So are you good at connecting with boomers, Xers, millennials, Gen Zers? And in this 41 question assessment, you can take it and then get a report back within 5 minutes in your inbox, where you can see, ooh, I'm really good with these guys, but not so great with these guys. And then we offer a bit of an action plan on how to better connect with with your language to these different generations. So I would love for people, it's free, so I'm not making a dime off this, but it's called the GQ assessment. If you went to newdiversitybook.com, you can find that assessment. newdiversitybook.com.
Okay. So I can go take this right now and see how good I am at speaking Gen Alpha. Is it? Because my kids, I love my 12-year-old loves talking about all the Karens.
Okay.
So I get to hear about it.
Yes.
Dad,
so
you're
funny.
being a Karen. I'm like, I'm not a Karen, bud.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. That's fun. No, it actually is an assessment for 4 generations: Boomers, Xers, Millennials, and Gen Z. Yeah.
Okay. Gen Alpha will come in the second edition once they're in the workforce.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And the second thing I was going to bring up, if we do have any millennials or and any Gen Zers who are listening, an encyclopedia is a book that they used to have back when I was a kid, when you didn't have the internet to look stuff up. You had to go get the book and open it, and that was our version of Google. It was a book. Right. Imagine if Google was 25 books that people sold door to door. That's what an encyclopedia. I know it sounds like Wikipedia, which is based off the word encyclopedia, but that's just for you Gen Xers or Gen Zers and millennials. I wanted to educate you before we got off the show.
There you go.
Man, Tim. So, wow, what this has been so much fun. I really appreciated having you here. I know the book's coming out. Can we get the date of the book and where people can go if they want to grab a copy of it or any of the other work that you're doing right now?
Absolutely, yeah. So the book will be released officially October 25th, 2022, and it's a new kind of diversity. And if they went to newdiversitybook.com, they can find it, or Amazon or wherever books are sold. But we do have a lot of bonus stuff. If they go to newdiversitybook.com, they're going to get a 30-minute video of me teaching on it. So if they want to share it with their team and then start a conversation, they can. And then, of course, content. There's a generational chart in that book that I'm very excited about, where in 2 pages, I just have nothing but a chart that talks about the different market each generation represents, the different mindset they each start their career with, that might be very helpful at explaining the view of technology. Their view of authority is all very different. You can imagine a boomer has a different view of authority than a Gen Zer that goes, don't think I need you, I got a phone, that sort of thing. So it's a lot of fun. It's a fun book as well as a research-based book that I'm hoping is really helpful.
Oh man, I'm so excited to read it. So any listener that wants to learn more, you go to newdiversitybook.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
And you can also search on Amazon or where books are sold under the author's name, Tim Elmore, or A New Diversity Book. That's what it's called, New Diversity Book or A New Diversity Book.
A New Kind of Diversity is the title of the book. Yeah. Oh,
pardon me. A New Kind of Diversity. So the title of the book's A New Kind of Diversity by Tim Elmore. I got to go take this GQ. I can't wait to see my generational quotient. I already know I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail millennial. I'm going to get F. I'm going to get like a C minus, C plus on Gen Z. I'm going to crush Gen X, A plus.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
I'm going to kill it. It's like I grew up listening to Nirvana. I'm going to know this. Yep. And then the boomers, they're my parents. I know them. I love them. Yeah, I can't wait. And the Builders, that's a new one. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
So that is what, like people that served in like World War II, and this is like the Great Generation.
Well, no, that would be the seniors. The Builders are those one tucked in the middle, often called the silent generation, 1929 and 1945. Grew up in the Great Depression. It's my parents. And then, of course, World War II. So they were called builders because they built so much out of so little. They were very resourceful. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What a great generation.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a pleasure to have you here. And thank you so much. I'm so excited for the work you're doing and really excited to see how much impact you make with this work.
Thank you, Darius. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for letting me be on your show today. Appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure was ours. Guys, go get the book. Go check out the website. Go get your GQ done. Hopefully you'll do a little better on the new generation than I will. Till next time, peace out. We love you.
You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers, and after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind-the-scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.